In the southern states, the question of territorial expansion of slavery westward became explosive.
Blew up.
Right. Both the South and the North drew the same conclusion. The power to decide the question of slavery for the territories was the power to determine the future of slavery itself.
Well, no crap. By 1860, 4 doctrines had emerged to answer the question of federal control in the territories, and they all claimed that they were sanctioned by the Constitution, implicitly or explicitly. The first of these conservative, quote-unquote, theories represented by the Constitutional Union Party argued that the Missouri Compromise appointment of territory north for free soil and south for slavery should become a constitutional mandate. The Crittenden Compromise of 1860 was an expression of this view. So anything north, you ain't get no slaves. Anything south, continue. So basically they were trying to draw a line in the middle of the United States.
Right. The second doctrine of congressional preeminence, championed by Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party, insisted that the Constitution did not bind legislators to a policy of balance, that slavery could be excluded in a territory as it is done in the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, at the discretion of Congress. Thus, Congress could restrict human bondage, but never establish it. The ill-fated Wilmot Proviso announced this position in 1846.
Why don't they just leave it up to the states? You want to have slavery, have slavery.
That's what they tried doing. They're like from the Mississippi to the east.
All right. Anything else? Anything else we expand to? No.
Right.
I mean, what if that state wanted to, though?
Right.
Not saying it's good or bad. No. Obviously, it's fucking bad, but
right.
I mean,
states' rights, man.
States' rights.
You can't stop at one thing and continue to let them do another.
The proviso was a pivotal moment in national politics, as it was the first time slavery had become a major congressional issue based on sectionalism instead of party lines.
Ooh.
Its bipartisan support by Northern Democrats and Whigs and bipartisan opposition by Southerners was the dark omen of coming divisions.
I mean, so you had everybody everywhere, and they didn't know. It's a toss-up. They'll take it and leave it, usually. The only guys that are really bitching are the people that had 100,000-acre farms. Senator Stephen A. Douglas proclaimed the doctrine of territorial or popular sovereignty, which asserted that settlers in a territory had the same right as states in the Union to establish or disestablish slavery as a purely local matter.
Didn't I just say that?
Right. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, though, in 1854, legislated this doctrine.
Okay, so now it's a legislative.
In the Kansas Territory, years of pro- and anti-slavery violence and political conflict erupted. The United States House of Representatives voted to admit Kansas as a free state as early as 1860. But its admission did not pass the Senate until January of 1861, after the departure of Southern senators.
Obviously, all the Southern guys were out of there. Now, of course, it's going to pass.
Like, yep, we're good now, boys.
We're good. We're free. Even though we're not, because half of the southern half of Kansas is still doing stuff. The fourth theory was advocated by Mississippi Senator Jefferson Davis.
Ooh, we all know who that guy is.
One of state sovereignty, also known as Calhoun Doctrine, named after the South Carolinian political theorist and statesman John C. Calhoun. Rejecting the arguments for federal authority or self-government, state sovereignty would empower states to promote the expansion of slavery as part of the federal union under the U.S. Constitution. States' rights, quote-unquote, was an ideology formulated and applied as a means of advancing slave state interests through federal authority.
See, they keep on saying slave, but there's more than just slavery. But obviously, this freaking place that you got this from is all they want to mention is slaves. When there's other states' rights that were trying to get taken away as well.
Like what?
There's all kind of... I can't remember them off the top hand.
You looked and you couldn't find nothing.
I didn't look. I did. Actually, I did. Yeah, we did find it.
No.
I forget.
There was nothing else.
I'm going to get that book out.
There was nothing else.
I'm going to get that book.
There was nothing else.
I bet you that book would say some real stuff.
There was nothing else. There was nothing
else. As historian Thomas L. There was.
No.
Thomas L. Cranwitter points out, the Southern demand for federal slave protection represented a demand for an unprecedented expansion of federal power. Oh. Exactly. Like I just said, there's one example. These four doctrines compromised the dominant ideologies presented to the
American public exactly
on the matters of slavery.
The demand for federal slave protection represented a demand for unprecedented expansion of federal power. So now they're demanding more federal power?
No.
When they're claiming states' rights at the same time?
The Southern demand for federal slave protection represented a demand for unprecedented expansion of federal power.
So now they want federal power or... Federals to weigh in, but they also are crying state rights at the same time. Get the hell out of here.
Right, saying the government that should demand that. No, I don't. Yeah,
Get out of here.
yeah, I don't like that. These 4 doctrines comprise the dominant ideologies presented to the American public on the matters of slavery, the territories, and the United States Constitution before the 1860 presidential election. They say these are the main things: slavery, westward movement, and how big does our government play in states' rights.
Oh, look at this. A long-running dispute over the origin of the Civil War as to what extent states' rights triggered the conflict. The consensus among historians is that the Civil War was not fought about states' rights, but the issue is frequently referenced in popular accounts of the war and has much traction among
You
Southerners.
just said historians, which means they're all union-loving bastards.
Historians-
who are going to take the union side over everything.
Historians who have covered it way more extensively than you and I ever could.
They're not going to admit the truth. CDC don't want to tell you that you
These aren't,
have a very
historians
low-
aren't government.
You have a very low chance of dying of COVID. So historians are not going to tell you that, hey, the union was actually kind of wrong in this war. Yeah, historians don't want to admit that union, the team that won,
You're talking about
had major faults.
You're talking about a government agency and the CDC, and then comparing
totally
them to
different.
historians.
Okay, same as professors who teach all different kinds of stuff in schools.
Well, we know that college professors are liberal as hell. First of all,
And so are most historians.
yeah, because you know historians, right?
Yeah.
Because you never watched a documentary where they have plenty of historians that stick up for the Confederate, right? 'Cause I have.
Yeah, I've seen some.
Okay, then.
Seen some.
The consensus means most historians.
Yeah.
But the issue is frequently referenced in popular accounts of the war and has much traction among Southerners, which you are not.
I'm not Southern. No one said I was. I just see the facts.
The South argued that just as each state had decided to join a union, a state had the right to secede,
Which they do.
leave the union at any time.
Which they do.
Northerners, including pro-slavery President Buchanan, rejected that notion as opposed to the will of the founding fathers who said they were setting up a perpetual union.
President Buchanan, a pro-slave,
Right.
and he's a Northerner.
But also was like, no, you guys don't got a right to secede.
They do have a right in the Constitution.
Well, according to the founding fathers, they were setting up a perpetual union, so no, it's not in the
It
Constitution.
is that any state can leave you the Union.
No, after an amendment.
Right. They can ask to leave. They can't just leave.
Right.
Right. It has to be agreed upon.
And was it?
I think they granted
It
one
was
state.
No, it was
Did they?
it was agreed upon through the 11 states that did it.
I think Virginia was allowed by the United
South
States.
Carolina was the first one.
Yeah, South Carolina. I think they were allowed.
No, they said, I'm gone.
Was it? That's how it went?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Historian James Pearson points out that even if Confederates genuinely fought over states' rights, it boiled down to states' right to slavery. Of course, they're going to keep on saying that. I hate how this keep on going back to the one thing where people want to sink their teeth into.
You just don't like the truth, but
It's not the truth. McPherson
is.
writes concerning states' rights and other. I just explained it last time. Northerners didn't give a shit about slavery. They didn't give a shit. That's why when they were free and they went up there, they didn't allow them to even drink out of their own fucking water fountain. They weren't even allowed on the same side of the street. You weren't even allowed to go in the same store, same bathroom, same school. So that's slavery still. So it wasn't about slavery and never
you know what
was.
slavery is?
It was never about slavery.
There's a difference between slavery and segregation.
That's still slavery, though. It's
No.
still slavery.
How's it slavery?
What's the difference? While one or more of these interpretations remain popular among the sons of Confederate veterans and other Southern heritage groups, few professional historians now subscribe to them. So, yeah. Of all these interpretations, the states' rights argument is perhaps the weakest. It fails to ask the question, states' rights of what purpose? States' rights or sovereignty was always more a means than an end, an instrument to achieve a certain goal more than a principle. Once again, has nothing to do with anything.
So there goes a big old hole in your state's right theory.
Because all that's doing is they're trying to enforce their slavery agenda. So they got to discredit the states' rights. No, not states' rights.
We already established earlier that the South wanted just quote unquote use their states' rights to do slavery, but didn't want the North to use their state rights to accept fugitives.
The anti-slavery part, yeah,
Right.
Each states could do that.
So clearly, it's not about fucking states' rights, is it?
It is
That
about-
proved it right there.
Yeah, that's
that the
about
South
their-
didn't give a shit about state rights. They only gave a shit about their states' rights to slaves.
Yeah, they wanted their states' rights to enforce whatever their laws are, no matter where.
So they didn't care about states' rights for the Union.
Of course they did,
How did they?
because that's a state's
If
right.
they were complaining about the North states' rights,
They could have those, but
they couldn't.
No.
They wanted the federal government to step in and say that the North can't accept fugitives.
No,
even though it was, even though most
No,
North states
not
had
accept-
had no law
No.
for fugitive slaves.
no, they
Yes.
didn't want them not to accept.
They wanted to send them back when they got them.
Exactly.
Okay, and the North was like, no, that's not our state.
Right.
That's not our state law.
But they're also saying that you can't come here and get them, which their state was like, well, they're actually from here, so there's our law. We should be able to come and get them.
we can't cross into other states and overpower their
It's true.
state law.
That's true, and they shouldn't expect the federal government to uphold that. So that part I disagree with. Yeah, with that part.
So it's clear it's not about state rights.
of course it is.
No, it's about their rights.
No, it's about still their states rights.
But it's not about states' rights.
Sure, it is.